On Mother's Day last year, my daughter gave her mother-in-law a Tiffany necklace worth $18,000 and a 2-week trip to Hawaii. Me? She handed me a plastic rose from Dollar Tree and a card where the ink hadn't even dried yet. I'm going to tell you every part of this story, the part where I almost didn't survive it, the part where I did, and the part nobody warned me about, the part where I had to decide whether love was enough reason to let someone keep breaking me. But before I get to the worst of it, let me tell you about that morning. Because I think you need to understand what kind of Mother's Day I'd been preparing for, so you'll understand what kind of Mother's Day I actually got. If you're watching this, leave me a comment and tell me the city you're watching from. I want to see how far an old black woman's story can travel. And if anything I say today lands in a soft place for you, stay with me until the end. The last thing I say is the thing I most want you to hear. I was up at 5 that Sunday morning, earlier than choir practice, earlier than the birds. I'd been planning this Mother's Day for 3 weeks. In my kitchen in Atlanta, I preheated the oven to 350 and started on the peach cobbler Tiana had loved since she was 8 years old. The recipe was my grandmama's, written on an index card so old the pencil had almost faded to nothing. 4 cups of sliced Georgia peaches, 1.5 cups of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, a stick of butter, cinnamon, nutmeg. And that secret I'm not going to tell you, because some things a black grandmother takes to her grave. I wore the navy blue dress, the one Harold had picked out for me for our 30th anniversary before he got sick. I put on the pearl earrings he gave me for our 20th. I even sat down at my vanity and applied a little lipstick, a soft rose color, because I wanted my daughter to look at me and see that her mama had taken care of herself. On the kitchen counter sat a photo album I'd spent 2 months putting together. 3 generations of Washington women. My grandmama Eliza May, who was born in a sharecropper's cabin in 1912 and washed white folks' laundry so my mama could finish 8th grade. My mama Clara, who worked as a domestic for 37 years and never once missed a Sunday service. Me, Tiana, and now little Keisha, 6 years old and already with my grandmama's eyes. I'd written captions under every photograph. I'd had it bound in leather. On the front in gold lettering it said, "For my Tiana," so she remembers where her fire comes from. That album cost me $240. I didn't care. I'd have paid $2,000. At 11:30 that morning, I loaded the cobbler and the album into my car. I was driving over to Druid Hills, to the home of Gloria Brooks, my son-in-law's mother. Tiana had called the night before. Her voice had that clipped, businesslike tone I'd started hearing more and more over the last 2 years. Mother's Day brunch at Gloria's. 1 sharp. Don't be late. She hung up before I could tell her I was bringing cobbler. I should have heard it then. The way she said Gloria's like it was a given. The way she didn't ask me what I was doing that morning. The way she called me mother, now, instead of mama, in that voice she'd picked up somewhere between Spelman and her wedding day. But a 60-year-old black woman who's already buried a husband and 2 brothers, she learns not to look at the things that'll break what's left of her heart. So I didn't look. I drove. I should have seen it coming. Before I tell you what happened when I walked into Gloria Brooks's house, I need you to know who I am. Because the story doesn't make sense unless you know what kind of woman was holding that plastic rose. My name is Anna Mae Washington. I was born in 1965, in Macon, Georgia, in a house with no hot water, to a daddy who fixed other people's cars and a mama who cleaned other people's houses. My given name is Johnson, Anna Mae Johnson. Washington came later when I married Harold. I was the first person in my entire family line to finish high school. I was the first to go to college. Just the community college in Macon. But still, I studied business administration because my mama told me, "Baby, if you ever want to stop cleaning up behind white folks, you got to learn how they count their money." I worked nights at a Waffle House to pay for my own textbooks. I met Harold Washington in 1988 at Mount Zion Baptist Church in Macon on a Wednesday night prayer service. He was 24 years old, studying to be a pastor, with the softest eyes I've ever seen on a man. He asked if he could walk me home. I told him I had my own 2 feet. He asked if he could walk beside me anyway. I said yes. We walked 3 miles in the rain, and he never once tried to hold my hand. We got married the following June. I wore my mama's wedding dress, taken in at the waist. Harold wore a suit he borrowed from his uncle. The reception was potato salad and fried chicken on paper plates in the church basement. When I tell you we didn't have a dollar to our name, we didn't have a dollar to our name. But I had Harold, and he had me. and we had a God who'd seen fit to put us in each other's path. I thought that was enough. It was enough. In 1995, when Tiana was 3 years old, I borrowed $3,000 from Harold's grandmama and opened my first bakery, just a little storefront on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. I called it Washington's Sweet Kitchen. I baked everything myself for the first 2 years. Pound cakes, sweet potato pies, peach cobblers, red velvet cake with the real cream cheese frosting. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, get Tiana to daycare by 7, be at the bakery by 7:30. That first year, I made $11,000 in profit. I cried when I wrote it on my tax return. It felt like more money than God. Today, Washington's Sweet Kitchen has 4 locations across Atlanta. We employ 47 people, and I'll tell you something I'm proud of. Most of my employees are Black women who came to me after prison, or after rehab, or after a man left them with 3 babies and no plan. I hire them because nobody else will. I hire them because I remember what it felt like to be 18 years old and pregnant and scared, and having Harold Washington look me in the eye and say, "Anna, God doesn't make mistakes. He made you. He made this baby. We'll figure out the rest." He gave me a second chance, so I give other women their second chance. That's how this works. That's how a community keeps itself alive. I want to tell you one thing about Tiana before all this went wrong, because I don't want you to think I never loved my daughter. I don't want you to think I'm some bitter old woman making up a story. When Tiana was 7 years old, she used to stand on a wooden step stool in my kitchen, with flour up to her elbows, trying to roll out pie crust. Her hands were too small. The dough kept tearing. She'd get so frustrated she'd bite her bottom lip and her eyes would fill up, but she wouldn't cry. My girl was proud, even at 7. One evening, I remember it was a Tuesday, because I'd closed the bakery early. She looked up at me with flour on her cheek and said, "Mama, when I grow up, can I make biscuits as good as you?" And I got down on my knees, right there on that kitchen floor, and I took her little flour-covered face in my hands, and I said, "Baby, you're not going to make biscuits as good as me. You're going to make biscuits better than me. You're going to go further than me, farther than me, higher than me. That's why mamas work, so their babies can fly." She wrapped her arms around my neck and said, "Then I'll come back and make biscuits with you every Tuesday." Every Tuesday. You remember that now, because that promise is going to matter later. Tiana went to Spelman College in 2010. I paid for all 4 years, $180,000 in tuition, room, board, books, everything. I didn't take out loans. I didn't let her take out loans. I'd saved every penny from the bakery for 12 years to put that child through school without a nickel of debt on her shoulders. The day she got her acceptance letter, Harold and I sat in the kitchen and cried together. Our baby was going to one of the finest HBCUs in the country. Our baby. She met Derek Brooks her junior year. He was a senior at Morehouse studying architecture. Tall, handsome, smooth-talking. I should have seen it then, too. The way he looked at our house when he first visited. Not like he was meeting his girlfriend's family, like he was taking inventory. The Brooks family is what folks around Atlanta call old black money. Not really old. Nothing in this country is old for us, but old enough. Gloria Brooks is 58 years old, retired professor of sociology at Emory University. Her late husband had been a city councilman back in the 90s. They live in a 6,000-square-foot home in Druid Hills. Gloria is a member of the Lynx. She's Alpha Kappa Alpha, graduate chapter, naturally. Her walls are covered in degrees and framed magazine features and photographs of herself shaking hands with Andrew Young and Maynard Jackson. The first time I met Gloria, at a dinner at her home in 2015, she looked me up and down. I was wearing a perfectly nice blue suit from Macy's, and she smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and she said, "Oh, Anna, how lovely. Tiana tells me you have a little bakery." A little bakery. That year, Washington's Sweet Kitchen cleared $1.4 million in revenue. I smiled back. I said, "Yes, ma'am. The Lord's been good to me. My mama taught me, you don't correct a woman like Gloria Brooks in her own dining room. You let her show you who she is. Then you decide what to do with the information." I should have decided sooner. Tiana and Derek got married in 2019. I paid for the wedding, $94,000. The venue was the Georgian Terrace Hotel. Tiana's dress was Vera Wang. We had 240 guests, a 6-piece band, and a custom 5-tier cake I made myself because I wouldn't have trusted anybody else with my daughter's wedding cake. Gloria Brooks contributed by giving a 22-minute speech about how proud she was to welcome Tiana into the Brooks legacy. She did not once mention my name. She did not once mention Harold's name. When she was done, she sat down, and her friends from the links applauded for a full minute. At the reception, I watched my only daughter dance with her husband to a song I didn't recognize, and I thought, she's happy. That's all that matters. She's happy. Now here's where the red flags started. The ones I pretended not to see. Tiana started correcting my speech. Not in private. In public. In front of her friends. In front of Gloria's friends. In front of her own babies, eventually. Mama, it's ask, not ax. Mama, don't say finna in front of the girls. Mama, please don't tell that story about Grandmama Eliza and the laundry. It's depressing. Depressing. My grandmama's life. Depressing. When Keisha was born in May of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, I drove 9 hours straight from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., where Tiana and Derek had moved for his job. I got there at midnight. Gloria was already there. She'd flown in first class the day before. By the time the baby was 2 days old, Gloria had established herself as Grandmama, her official title, spelled out in the baby's nursery on a hand-painted wooden sign that cost $450. Me? I was Grandma Anna, like I was some distant cousin, like I was a neighbor. When Harold died in June of 2021, pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late, gone in 4 months, Tiana flew home for the funeral. She stayed 4 days. On the morning of day 5, she told me she needed to get back to D.C. because Derek can't manage the house by himself. I had just buried my husband, the love of my life, the man who'd held my hand through 32 years of marriage. And my only daughter left me alone in a house full of his clothes because a grown man couldn't operate a washing machine. I didn't say anything. I hugged her at the airport. I told her I loved her. I drove home to my empty house and sat on the edge of our bed, and I didn't cry. Not that day. I wouldn't cry about Tiana for almost 3 years. That brings us to the spring of 2024, the last normal months of my life, though I didn't know it yet. I was 60 years old. My hair was fully silver now. I'd stopped dyeing it after Harold died because he'd always said my gray hair looked like a queen's crown. And once he was gone, I didn't feel like hiding it anymore. Most Saturdays I sang in the choir at Greater Faith Baptist Church over on Cascade Road. Second soprano. Pastor Whitfield knew better than to schedule me for any part that required high notes after 55, but I could still hold my second soprano line better than women half my age. Every Saturday after practice, the older women and I would go to Pascal's for fried chicken and sweet tea, and we'd talk about everything. Grandchildren, blood pressure, which deacons were circling which widows, the state of this country, the state of our knees. I had a rose garden in my backyard, 12 bushes. Harold had planted them 20 years ago. He'd said he wanted me to have something pretty to look at when he was out saving the world. Every spring, those roses came back. Every spring, without me doing hardly a thing, just a little water, a little pruning, those roses came back. I think Harold had whispered something to the roots before he passed. I think he'd told them, keep her company when I'm gone. I had my best friend Ruth Caldwell. Ruth and I met in 1993 at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon, when I was the only black woman in the room, and she walked straight over to me and said, "Girl, let's eat together before these white folks bore us to death." Ruth is 65 now. She's a lawyer. Estate planning, probate, trusts. Harvard Law, class of 1986. She came up in her career swallowing microaggressions that would have made a weaker woman into a different kind of person. But Ruth isn't a different kind of person. Ruth is still Ruth. Every Tuesday morning, Ruth came to my house for coffee. Just coffee. No agenda. We'd sit at my kitchen table and talk for 2 hours. Sometimes we'd talk about the news. Sometimes we'd talk about God. Sometimes we wouldn't talk at all, and we'd just sit in the quiet together, because that's what 30 years of friendship gives you. The right to be silent with somebody. At the bakery, I had Jerome Bailey. Jerome came to me in 2011. He was 29 years old, fresh out of federal prison. 5 years for something involving drugs that he never told me the whole truth about, and I never asked. He'd grown up in foster care. Never knew his mama. He walked into the bakery off Auburn Avenue with a paper resume that had 3 coffee stains on it, and he said, "Mrs. Washington, I'll mop your floors for minimum wage. Just give me one chance." I hired him. Within 2 years, he was managing the Auburn location. Within 5 years, he was my general manager over all 4 stores. Today, at 45 years old, Jerome runs more of Washington's sweet kitchen than I do. He's the son I would have had if God had given me another baby after Tiana. He calls me Mama A. He's the only person in the world I let call me that, because he earned it. He earned every letter of it. That spring, I made a decision. I'd been thinking about it for a year. I was going to transfer Washington's sweet kitchen to Tiana over the next 5 years. I'd already spoken with Ruth about the legal structure, a phased handover with training milestones, with Jerome staying on as operations partner. I wanted to leave my daughter a legacy, not money, not a house, a business, a thing her name would be on, a thing her children would inherit, something that said, "Your people built this. Your people are builders." I'd also started quietly renovating the old Washington family home in Buckhead, a house Harold and I had bought in 1998 and kept as a rental for the last 15 years. I decided to give it to Tiana and Derek as a surprise, a fully paid-off home in one of Atlanta's finest neighborhoods, appraised at $780,000. I pictured their faces when I handed them the keys. I pictured Keisha and Elijah running through that backyard. That was the picture in my head. The Saturday night before Mother's Day, Tiana called. I remember I was in the rose garden, deadheading the spent blooms with my clippers, when my phone rang in my apron pocket. "Mother, Mother's Day brunch at Gloria's, 1 sharp. Don't be late." I said, "Baby, hey, I was just thinking about you. I'm making peach cobbler, your favorite. I'll bring it over Sunday." There was a pause, a long one. Then, "You don't have to do that. Gloria's having it catered." I laughed. "Catered cobbler? Baby, that's not cobbler. That's just fruit pie in a pan. I'll bring mine." She sighed. I heard it through the phone. The kind of sigh that says I don't have time for this. "Fine, Mother. Whatever you want, 1 sharp." She hung up. I stood in my rose garden with my clippers in my hand, and I looked at Harold's flowers, and for just 1 second, just one, I let myself feel what I'd been refusing to feel for 3 years. My daughter was drifting away from me. Then I put the thought away. I closed it up in the back of my heart like I always did. I went inside. I started prepping the peaches for the cobbler. I hummed a hymn while I worked. That was the last normal Saturday night I would ever have. Sunday morning, 12:45 p.m. I pulled my car up to Gloria Brooks's house in Druid Hills. Y'all, let me paint the picture for you. Gloria's street looks like something out of a magazine. Oak trees 100 years old. Driveways longer than some people's entire front yards. And that day, every driveway on her block was packed. BMWs, Mercedes, a black Range Rover, a silver Tesla. I parked my Buick LaCrosse 2 houses down, and I felt it, the first little twinge of I don't belong here. But I swallowed it. I'd been swallowing that feeling my whole life. I carried the peach cobbler in both hands. I had the photo album tucked under my arm. I walked up Gloria's driveway in my navy blue dress and my sensible heels, and I rang her doorbell. Gloria opened the door. She was wearing a cream-colored silk blouse and pearls the size of grapes. She looked at me. She looked at the cobbler. She looked back at my face. And she said, "I swear to you on everything holy." This is the first thing she said to me that Mother's Day. "Oh, Anna, bless your heart, you brought a dish." Bless your heart. If you're not from the South, let me explain something to you. In the mouth of a woman like Gloria Brooks, bless your heart is not a blessing. It's the most polite weapon we have down here. It's what a woman says when she wants to call you poor, or simple, or embarrassing. But her mama raised her better than to say the word. I stood on her doorstep with a cobbler in my hands that I'd been baking since before her Tiffany necklace was a glimmer in my daughter's eye. I smiled at Gloria Brooks. I stepped inside Gloria Brooks' house, and the first thing that hit me was the noise. 20, maybe 25 people. Laughter bouncing off her cathedral ceilings. A jazz trio set up in the corner of the living room. A real trio, not a Bluetooth speaker. 3 men in tuxedos playing Duke Ellington on a Sunday afternoon. The dining room table stretched almost the length of the room, covered in white linen, with crystal everywhere and catering staff in black vests moving between the kitchen and the buffet. I recognized maybe 4 people. Tiana and Derek, of course. Gloria's sister, who I'd met at the wedding. And one of Gloria's Lynx sisters I'd sat next to at the rehearsal dinner. Everybody else, the sorority women, the professors, the neighbors, Gloria's bridge club, they were strangers to me. To me. On Mother's Day. Tiana came out of the kitchen holding a glass of champagne. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that matched Gloria's blouse. That was the first thing I noticed. Not similar, matched, like they'd planned it. "Mother," she said. She gave me a quick hug, the kind where a woman's shoulders come toward you but her chest stays back. "You made it." "Of course I made it, baby. It's Mother's Day." I held up the cobbler. "Where do you want me to put this?" Tiana glanced at Gloria, who was already crossing the living room toward us with her hands folded in front of her like she was about to greet a minor diplomat. "Oh," Tiana said. There's a little sideboard in the kitchen. You can put it there." "It's still warm? Should we put it on the buffet?" Gloria cut in, smooth as silk. "Oh, honey, the buffet's already set. The caterers have it all arranged. You just pop that little dish on the sideboard and it'll be perfect." That little dish. I've been making that cobbler for 45 years. $150 wouldn't buy the ingredients and the time. That little dish. I carried my cobbler past the buffet, past the catered shrimp cocktail, past the deviled eggs with microgreens, past a charcuterie board the size of a coffee table, and I set it down on the sideboard in the kitchen next to a stack of folded dish towels. The way you'd set down a dirty pan. That's where my peach cobbler spent Mother's Day. I set the photo album on the sideboard, too. Nobody had asked what I was carrying. When I came back to the living room, Tiana was already deep in conversation with one of Gloria's Lynx sisters, laughing about something. She didn't introduce me. I stood there for about 30 seconds, holding my purse in both hands like a woman waiting for a bus, and then Gloria glided over and took my elbow. "Anna, let me show you where you'll be sitting." She walked me to a small round table near the kitchen doorway. 4 chairs. 3 of them were already occupied by elderly women I didn't know. The 4th had a little handwritten name card that said Anna in calligraphy. Not Anna Washington, not Mrs. Washington, just Anna. Gloria smiled. "We thought you'd be more comfortable over here, less noise. And Eleanor here?" She gestured at one of the women. "She was a school teacher for 40 years, so you two will have plenty to talk about. I don't know what a bakery owner and a retired school teacher are supposed to have in common that the other 18 people at Gloria's main table weren't qualified to discuss. But I sat down. I said hello to Eleanor, who was polite but already deep in conversation with the woman next to her. And I watched my daughter eat lunch at a table 15 feet away from me, in her matching cream dress, next to the woman she now called Mother. I want you to understand something. I didn't make a scene. I didn't get up and leave. I didn't even let my face change. A black woman of my generation, we learned how to keep our faces flat the way other children learned how to tie their shoes. Our mamas drilled it into us. Don't you let them see you cry. Don't you let them see you bleed. You sit there and you smile and you finish your plate and you thank the hostess. And then you drive home and you fall apart in your own kitchen where nobody can use it against you. So that's what I did. I sat at that little table and I ate catered shrimp and I nodded politely while Eleanor told me about her grandchildren. And I waited for the gift exchange, because that's what Mother's Day is, isn't it? Gifts. Recognition. A little moment where you tell your mother you matter. Around 2:15, Tiana stood up and tapped her champagne glass with a spoon. The whole room quieted. She beamed, tears in her eyes already. Before dessert, Derek and I wanted to take a moment. "Mother Gloria, this year has meant so much to us. You've been my rock. You've shown me what it means to be a woman of grace. You've welcomed me into this family like I was your own daughter." Like I was your own daughter. I was sitting 15 feet away. Derek stood up beside her with a small robin's egg blue box. Tiffany blue. You all know that color. You all know what it costs. "Mother," Tiana said, and her voice broke a little, and she laughed through the tears. "This is just a small way of saying thank you." Gloria opened the box. Inside, a diamond pendant on a white gold chain. The center stone had to be at least 2 carats. The room gasped. Gloria brought a hand to her chest. "Tiana, baby, this is too much." "It's not nearly enough," Tiana said, "and there's more." Derek handed Gloria a cream-colored envelope with a gold seal. Gloria opened it. Inside were 2 first-class tickets to Maui, plus a reservation at the Four Seasons Resort, 2 weeks Ocean View Suite. Gloria actually sobbed, out loud. Her Lynx sisters rushed over to her. Everybody was hugging. Somebody raised a champagne glass and said, "To Mother Gloria," and the whole room toasted. I sat at my little table near the kitchen and I held my napkin in my lap and I smiled. Eleanor, the retired schoolteacher next to me, patted my hand. She said quietly, "Well, isn't that nice?" She was trying to be kind. I could hear it. It was the kindness of a woman who just watched something she wasn't going to talk about when she got home. Tiana turned toward my table. For a second, I actually thought, God help me. Here it comes. Here's my moment. She walked across the room holding something in her hand. She held out a small brown paper bag, the kind you get at a convenience store, crumpled at the top. "Happy Mother's Day, Mama." Mama. She hadn't called me that in 4 years. She called me Mama right then because there were witnesses. And I noticed that. Even in the middle of it, I noticed that. I took the bag. I opened it. Inside, a plastic rose, red, $4.99, the sticker from Dollar Tree still on the stem, and a generic Hallmark card with a printed message. "Thanks for everything, Mom." And underneath, in Tiana's handwriting, just her initial and Derek's, T and D. The ink was smeared. She'd written it in the car on the way over. I lifted my eyes to my daughter's face, and for the first time in 20 years, I couldn't find my baby girl in there. I want to tell you something I haven't told anybody except Ruth. About 10 minutes after the gifts, I went into the kitchen to get myself a glass of water. I needed a minute, just a minute where nobody was watching my face. The caterers had cleared out to the patio for a break. The kitchen was empty. I walked past the sideboard where my cobbler was sitting, still untouched, the foil still on. And I went to the sink, and I turned on the faucet, and I let the water run over my fingers because my hands had started to shake. And that's when I saw it. On the marble island, next to a cutting board, a Tiffany receipt. Not just the credit card slip, the full itemized receipt. $18,412, paid on a MasterCard ending in a number I recognized as my daughter's. And tucked underneath the receipt, a little pink Post-it note. In Tiana's handwriting, "Mother Gloria, only the best for you. Note to self, do not let Mama A see the amount. Mama A." I stared at that Post-it note for a long time. The water kept running in the sink behind me. My hand was still shaking, but I wasn't shaking from sadness anymore. I was shaking because in 32 years of raising that girl, I had never once, not once, done a thing for her I wasn't willing to let her see on paper. I'd put every tuition check in her hand. I'd shown her every receipt. I'd sat her down at 16 and taught her to read a bank statement. I'd taught her that money with secrets attached to it isn't a gift. It's a leash. And here she was, hiding her numbers from me, in a kitchen that belonged to another woman. I put the Post-it note back exactly where I'd found it. I turned off the faucet. I dried my hands. I walked back out to the living room and I sat at my little table with Eleanor, and I laughed at something she said about her grandson, and I stayed another 45 minutes because a black woman does not leave a party early and let a Gloria Brooks say Anna just couldn't handle it. When I finally got up to leave, I said goodbye to Gloria first. I thanked her for her hospitality. Then I hugged my daughter and I told her I loved her. I did love her. That's the part that made it so hard. I took the plastic rose with me, put it in my purse, walked out to my car, drove 2 miles down the road, pulled over onto the shoulder of I-85, and I sat there for 40 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there with my hands on the wheel and watched the cars go by. I drove home. I left the plastic rose on the kitchen counter. I didn't throw it away. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. A 60-year-old black woman learns to cry in silence. My mama taught me that before I could read. But there's something else I learned along the way, something that took me most of my life to figure out. I learned when to stop believing the nice story. The next Tuesday, Ruth Caldwell came over for coffee. Like she did every Tuesday. I poured 2 cups. I set out the butter cookies. I sat down across from her at the kitchen table, and I told her. I started with the matching dresses. I told her about the little round table near the kitchen, the cobbler on the sideboard, the Tiffany necklace, the Post-it note, the plastic rose still sitting on my counter 3 feet from where we were having coffee. Ruth didn't interrupt me. She let me get it all out. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. She stirred her coffee slowly, even though she'd already stirred in her sugar. Then she said, "Anna, I have to tell you something. I didn't know how to tell you before, but I think it's time." I set my cup down. "Last week," Ruth said, "I was having lunch at the Buckhead Diner. I was sitting in a back booth. I saw Tiana come in. She was with Gloria Brooks. They didn't see me. They sat 2 booths over. Okay. They had their heads bent over some papers. Architectural drawings, I think. And some financial statements. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, Anna, but you know how those booths are. I heard Gloria say, I'm going to tell you exactly what she said. Once we get through phase 3, your mother's money won't be a problem anymore. I didn't say anything. Ruth said, Anna, look at me. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but somebody has to. My hand was shaking so badly I couldn't pick up my coffee cup. That night, after Ruth left, I sat down at my dining room table with my laptop and every file I could pull from my business accounts for the past 3 years. I hadn't looked at these accounts in detail in a long time. Jerome handled day-to-day operations. My bookkeeper handled invoices. I handled strategy. I trusted the people I'd hired. That's how I'd always run my company. But that night, I went line by line. I didn't stop until 4 in the morning. Here's what I found. In 2022, Washington's Sweet Kitchen had paid a consulting fee of $47,000 to Derek Brooks for architectural services related to the renovation of our Auburn Avenue location. I called Jerome the next morning at 6 a.m. and asked him if he remembered Derek being on that job site. Jerome was quiet a long time. Then he said, Mama A, I need to come over to your house. He drove over before the bakery opened. He sat in my kitchen and he held his head in his hands. He said, Mama A, I have wanted to tell you this for 2 years. Tiana told me you approved it. She told me it was your plan to bring Derek into the business and that I wasn't supposed to say anything to you because it was going to be a surprise when they announced it. I believed her. She's your daughter. Why wouldn't I believe her? I looked at Jerome across my kitchen table, at the man I had trusted with my business for 13 years, and I watched him cry. And I reached across the table, and I took his hand and I said, Jerome, this is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. I'm going to handle this. I went back to the laptop. Derek Brooks had never set foot on that job site. The architect of record on that renovation was a firm called Sterling and Hayes. Derek had submitted an invoice. My bookkeeper had paid it. My bookkeeper assumed, because Derek was my son-in-law, that it was legitimate. $47,000. Gone. Next I found, Tiana had been receiving $2,800 a month from Washington's Sweet Kitchen for marketing consulting services. That's $33,600 a year, going back 3 full years. $100,000. I had never signed a consulting agreement with my daughter. I had never approved a marketing budget that included her. I had no memory of ever discussing it with her. Next, in early 2023, my company had taken out a $125,000 loan against our equipment, the stated purpose of which was expansion of Decatur location. Our Decatur location had opened in 2018. There was no expansion planned. The loan proceeds had been wired to a business account I didn't recognize. The account was owned by something called GB Holdings, LLC. I opened a new browser window. I looked up GB Holdings on the Georgia Secretary of State's business registration website. The registered owner and sole member of GB Holdings, LLC, Gloria Brooks. I sat back in my chair. Then I kept going. Over the previous 18 months, Washington's Sweet Kitchen had paid GB Holdings a total of $340,000 in various licensing fees, consulting retainers, and vendor payments for services I had no record of receiving. I added it all up on my calculator. The consulting fees, the monthly payments to Tiana, the fraudulent architectural fees, the loan proceeds, the GB Holdings payments, and a few other smaller items I won't bore you with. $680,000. Stolen. From me. From my business. Over 3 years. Through my own daughter's hands. I sat there in my dining room at 2:47 in the morning, and I opened a brand new Excel spreadsheet, and I started calculating something else. I calculated every dollar I had spent on Tiana since she turned 18 years old. Spelman tuition, room, board, books. 4 years. $180,000. Her first apartment in D.C. after college, 6 months of rent paid, $14,400. Her wedding to Derek, $94,000. The down payment on the Georgetown townhouse, $180,000. Her 2020 Audi Q5, $52,000, paid in full. The emergency loan I'd given her and Derek in 2021 when he was between jobs, $80,000, never repaid. Keisha's delivery costs, they were underinsured, $18,000. Elijah's delivery costs, $22,000. Private school tuition for Keisha, 2 years and counting, $54,000. The credit card I let her use for emergencies and paid off every month, somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 over 10 years. I stopped counting at $1,200,000. $1.2 million, 14 years. And for Mother's Day, I got a plastic rose. I want to be honest with you about something. Sitting at that table at 4 a.m, I was not angry. I was not even sad. I was past angry, past sad, past all the feelings with normal names. What I felt was a quiet, terrible clarity. The kind of clarity you feel when a doctor shows you an X-ray, and finally you know what's been wrong with you for the last 2 years. I got up from the table. I walked to the kitchen. I made myself a fresh cup of coffee. I looked at the plastic rose still sitting on the counter where I'd left it 2.5 weeks before, and I said out loud to the empty kitchen, "No, we are not going to end like this." I didn't tell Tiana. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I went about my business for 3 more days like nothing had changed. On the 4th day, I drove to the airport. I flew to D.C. without telling her I was coming. I took a taxi from Reagan National to Georgetown, and I stood on the front porch of the townhouse that I had put the down payment on, and I rang the doorbell at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Tiana opened the door. She was holding a coffee mug. She was wearing yoga pants. When she saw me, her face drained of color so fast I watched it happen in real time. "Mama, what are you doing here? You didn't call." "I know I didn't call, baby. May I come in?" I walked past her into the house. I heard Derek's footsteps on the stairs. I walked straight to the kitchen table, sat down, and I set a leather portfolio on the table in front of me. Inside the portfolio were bank statements, loan documents, the GB Holdings corporate filing, 3 forged invoices from Derek's fake architecture consulting, and a 1-page summary I had typed up the night before. "Sit down, Tiana. Derek, both of you. We need to talk." Derek came into the kitchen with wet hair from the shower. He saw the portfolio. He saw my face. He went perfectly still in the doorway for about 2 seconds, long enough for me to know that he knew exactly what was in that folder. They sat down. I opened the portfolio. I said, "What is GB Holdings?" Tiana opened her mouth. "Mama, what is GB Holdings, Tiana?" She glanced at Derek. He looked at his hands. It's Mother Gloria's investment vehicle. She's been helping us think about expansion for the bakery. The payments were for consulting on strategy and—" "Stop." My voice didn't rise. It went lower. That's how you know it's bad, when a black woman gets quieter instead of louder. "Stop lying to me, Tiana. I have every document. I know every dollar. I know every date. I know who signed every invoice. I know who wired every payment. I want to hear it from you. I want to hear you say it out loud. What is GB Holdings?" She started to cry. Not the big performative cry from Gloria's house. A real cry. The kind where your face goes ugly. Mama, please let me explain." Derek cut in. "And when I tell you what this man said to me, I want you to sit down if you're not sitting down already, because you are not going to believe the audacity. He said, 'Mama Anna, with all due respect, that bakery is going to belong to Tiana someday anyway. We were just accessing the inheritance a little early, for planning purposes.'" I looked at him. I said, "Derek, how old are you?" 34, ma'am. 34 years old. And you believe that money your wife's mother earned, working night shifts at a Waffle House while I was pregnant with this woman sitting next to you, you believe that money belongs to you in advance, because you married her. Is that what you're telling me?" He didn't answer. I turned to my daughter. "Tiana, look at me." She looked at me. "When did you start calling her mother?" "Mama, that's not—" "When?" She was crying harder now. I don't know. A few years ago." "And when did I become Mama A?" She couldn't answer. "Tiana, I want you to understand what I'm about to say to you. I am not here because of the money. I can earn the money back. I am here because somewhere along the way, my only child decided that the woman who raised her was an embarrassment. Decided that her grandmother, Eliza May Johnson, who washed white folks' laundry so you could sit in this kitchen, decided that her story was depressing. Decided that the way I say the word ask needed to be corrected at dinner parties. Decided that she could take my money with one hand and cover my name with the other, and I would never find out because I was too simple to notice. Mama, that's not what— I want you to hear me, Tiana. I am not simple. I have never been simple. You got simple me confused with quiet me. Those are not the same. I stood up. I closed the portfolio. I reached into my purse and I pulled out the plastic rose, which I had carried with me every single day for 19 days. I set it on the kitchen table, between my daughter and her husband. I'm going to give this back to you, baby. I believe you need it more than I do. I walked to the front door. Tiana ran after me. She grabbed my arm in the hallway. Mama, please, please, don't leave like this. We can fix this. Tell me what you want. Tell me how to fix this. I'll do anything. I stopped. I turned around. I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl who used to stand on a step stool in my kitchen with flour on her cheek. And I said the last thing I said to her for 3 months. Tiana, I don't need you to fix anything right now. I need you to understand that some things you broke all the way. And when something is broken all the way, you don't fix it. You set it down and you go sit somewhere quiet, and you think real hard about why you broke it in the first place. I walked out. I closed the door behind me. Gently. That's the part I want you to remember. I didn't slam it. I took a cab to the Embassy Suites near DuPont Circle. I got a room on the 14th floor. I sat on the edge of the bed in that hotel room, and I looked out the window at the lights of Washington, D.C., and for the first time since Mother's Day, 3 weeks and 2 days later, I finally cried. I cried for about an hour. Then I opened my purse, and I took out the Bible Harold gave me on our wedding day. I turned to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? I read it 3 times. Then I called Ruth Caldwell. I said, Ruth, when I get back to Atlanta on Monday, I need you in your office at 9 a.m. I need to rewrite my entire estate. I need to restructure my entire business. And I need you to help me do something we have never talked about in 30 years of friendship. I need you to help me go to war. Ruth was quiet for 1 second. Then she said, Anna, I've been waiting 30 years for you to say that. I'll see you at 9. I flew back to Atlanta on Sunday. Tiana didn't call. She didn't text. I landed at Hartsfield-Jackson at 6 in the evening and drove myself home in the rain, and the house was exactly as I'd left it. Quiet, clean, full of Harold's things, and my own. For 3 days, I didn't leave. I called Jerome and told him I wasn't feeling well, and I'd be out of the office for a week. I unplugged my landline. I turned off the ringer on my cell. I didn't open the blinds. I just moved through the house slowly, like a woman convalescing from a surgery nobody could see. On the 3rd night, a Wednesday, I decided to finally clean out the closet in Harold's old study. I'd been putting it off for almost 4 years, but I needed my hands to do something. I needed to not think about Tiana for an hour. Harold's closet was the way he'd left it. His sermons in 3-ring binders, his commentaries, a box of cassette tapes from revival services in the 1990s, his fishing vest that still smelled faintly like the Chattahoochee, and on the top shelf, pushed all the way to the back, a plain cardboard file box I didn't recognize. I pulled it down. It was heavier than I expected. I sat down on the floor of the study in my robe and I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, rubber banded together by year. Harold had saved every card I'd ever written him. Every Father's Day note from Tiana when she was little. A bundle of letters from his own mother, dating back to when he was in seminary. And at the very top of the box, sitting alone, was a sealed envelope. My name was on the front. Harold's handwriting. For my Anna, when you need it. I stared at it a long time before I opened it. I knew the date already, June 3rd, 2020. It was right there on the front in his careful pastor's handwriting. 3 weeks before he died. He wrote this when he knew. I slit the envelope with my finger. My Anna, if you're reading this, I am already with the Lord, and you are in a hard place. I'm sorry I can't be there to hold your hand. I've thought about this letter for weeks. I keep starting it and stopping. But I think the Lord wants me to be plain with you, even if being plain makes me a coward for doing it in writing. Anna, baby, I have been watching our daughter these last 2 years, and I have been afraid for her, and I have been afraid for you. I've watched her shrink away from us, slowly, the way a plant does when it's not getting enough sun. I have watched her correct your speech at her own dinner table. I have watched her call that Gloria woman mother while you sat 3 feet away. I have watched her take from you with both hands and forget to say thank you. I have watched her choose people who will never love her the way we love her, because they have more money and more manners and more of the things this world has taught her to be ashamed of being without. I didn't say anything. I wanted to. You know I wanted to, but I hoped that when I was gone, losing me would wake her up, that our baby would come home. Anna, if you are reading this, I was wrong. She did not come home. And something has happened that has finally broken your heart in a way my being gone didn't break it. I am so sorry. I want you to listen to me now. Anna Mae Johnson Washington, you are not an ATM. You are not a checkbook. You are not the house. You are not the bakery. You are not the tuition checks or the down payments or the emergency loans or any of the 10,000 ways you have kept that child alive and comfortable her whole life. Those things are things you did. They are not you. You are the woman I followed home in the rain in 1988 because I knew, Anna, that God had put something in you that I was going to need for the rest of my life. You are the woman who stood up in front of my mother when my mother was unkind to you and who never, ever lowered herself to her level. You are the woman who made a business out of nothing and who hires women nobody else will hire because you remember what the bottom of the ladder looks like, and you refuse to pull it up after you. Anna, you are made of fire and honey. That's what I used to tell the men in my Bible study when they asked me how I'd done so well for myself. I'd say, brothers, I married a woman made of fire and honey, and the Lord has been generous to me. Do not let anybody, not Gloria Brooks, not her son, not even our own child, make you into something smaller than what God made you to be. If Tiana has hurt you in the way I think she may have, you are going to have to make a decision. And Anna, I want you to know this. I am not asking you from the grave to forgive her. That is not my place. Forgiveness is between her and God. It is not a gift you owe her because she happens to share your blood. What I am asking you is this. Do not forget who you are. Do not let this break you. And if the only way to save yourself is to put some distance between you and the daughter we raised, then you put that distance in, and you do not let anybody in this world, including our daughter, tell you that is not love. Sometimes love is the fence you build. Sometimes love is the door you close. Sometimes love is saying, I love you, and I cannot let you keep doing this to me. I am so proud of you, Anna. I have been proud of you since 1988. I will be proud of you for eternity. Your husband, Harold P.S., the roses in the backyard. I told them to keep you company. They will. I sat on the floor of Harold's study and I cried for 2 hours. I cried until I didn't have anything left. I cried for Harold. I cried for Tiana. I cried for the girl I used to be, who thought if she just worked hard enough and loved hard enough, she could build a life where nobody would ever be ashamed of her. I cried for my mama, and for Grandmama Eliza, and for every black woman who ever stood in a kitchen and swallowed what the world handed her. And then I got up. I washed my face. I put on real clothes. I made myself a cup of coffee. I sat down at Harold's desk, and I started to plan. Ruth met me in her office at 9 the next morning, Monday. She had a legal pad in front of her, a pen in her hand, and a face I'd never seen before. Her courtroom face, the one she used to use on opposing counsel before she retired. Tell me what you want to do, Anna. All of it. Every piece, I told her. I wanted Washington's sweet kitchen taken out of my personal estate immediately and transferred into an irrevocable trust. The beneficiaries would not be Tiana. The beneficiaries would be my 2 grandchildren, Keisha and Elijah, with distributions held until they each turned 25 years old, at which point they would each receive a 25% equity stake. The remaining 50% would belong to Jerome Bailey as my operating partner, with an 8% immediate profit-sharing bonus vested effective immediately. I wanted the townhouse in Buckhead, the surprise I'd been renovating for Tiana and Derek, converted into the permanent headquarters of a brand new 501c3 nonprofit called the Harold Washington Foundation. Mission: full college scholarships for black women who had been formerly incarcerated or in recovery. 50 scholarships per year. I would seed it with $4 million from my own savings. I wanted every single power of attorney, every healthcare directive, every financial proxy, every trust document, every insurance beneficiary designation I had ever signed, rewritten. Tiana's name came off of everything, every single piece of paper with my signature on it. And I wanted Ruth to file a civil suit in the Superior Court of Fulton County against GB Holdings, LLC, and personally against Gloria Brooks for fraud, conversion, civil conspiracy, and unjust enrichment. I wanted my $680,000 back, plus interest, plus attorney's fees, plus punitive damages. Ruth wrote everything down without looking up. When I was done, she set down her pen. Anna, I can have this trust documents ready by Friday. The nonprofit will take 6 to 8 weeks. The suit against Gloria, I want to bring in an outside firm for the litigation so I can stay purely as your personal counsel. I have someone in mind. She's excellent. She's a shark. Do it. Ruth looked at me across her desk. She said, Anna, are you sure? About Tiana? About cutting her out of the trust? I was quiet for a minute. I said, Ruth, I am not cutting her out of my life. I am cutting her out of my money. Those are different things. My grandbabies deserve a future that doesn't depend on their mama's decisions. And my daughter needs to find out who she is when nothing is being handed to her. She may hate me forever. She may come back to me. That's between her and God. But I will not sit in this chair at 60 years old and keep funding the woman who put a Post-it note in Gloria Brooks's kitchen telling her to hide the receipt from me. Ruth nodded. She picked up her pen. Friday it is. For the next 6 weeks, I worked quietly. I did not call Tiana. Tiana did not call me. Jerome was told about the restructuring on a Monday morning in his office at the Auburn Avenue Bakery. When I explained that he would be receiving a 50% equity stake, he sat down on his office floor. He put his head in his hands. He cried. He said, Mama A, I never in my life, I can't take that, Mama A, that's too much. And I said, Jerome, you hush. You've earned it twice over. Your family. The paper is just going to say what has always been true. He hugged me so tight he lifted me off the floor. He's 6'3". I'm 5'4". He swung me around that little office like a little girl. Then I told him we were going to war, and I told him what I was going to need from him. Testimony, documentation, everything he knew about Derek's fake invoices. He said, Mama A, I'll testify in every courtroom in Georgia if you need me to. And I believed him. The outside litigation firm Ruth brought in was run by a woman named Loretta Vance, 52 years old, graduated first in her class at Howard Law. The first time I sat across from Loretta in her conference room, she read through the documents for 40 minutes without saying a word. Then she looked up at me and she said, Mrs. Washington, we are going to get every cent of your money back, and we are going to make this woman wish she had never heard the name Anna Washington. Do I have your permission to be aggressive? I said, Loretta, aggressive is the only thing I'm asking for. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. 3 weeks after I filed the suit, Loretta's investigator called her with news. Loretta called Ruth. Ruth called me at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. Anna, come to my office, now. I drove to Ruth's office. When I walked in, Loretta was already there. Both of them had their courtroom faces on. Loretta slid a folder across the table to me. Mrs. Washington, my investigator started looking into Gloria Brooks's prior relationships. We wanted to see if there was a pattern. There is. I opened the folder. Inside were documents relating to a family in Arlington, Virginia, Korean-American family. A woman named Grace Park had married Derek Brooks in 2014, before he met my Tiana. I had never known Derek had been married before. My daughter had never told me. Gloria had never mentioned it. Grace Park's mother had owned a chain of dry cleaning businesses in Northern Virginia, 14 locations. Successful first-generation immigrant business. Over the course of the 2.5 years that Grace was married to Derek, a holding company called, I'm not kidding, GB Holdings, LLC, registered in Virginia, had extracted approximately $420,000 from Grace Park's mother's dry cleaning company. Grace filed for divorce in 2016. She did not pursue the money. Loretta's investigator had spoken with her on the phone. She told him, Loretta said, quote, we were ashamed. My mother had worked her whole life for that money. We didn't want anybody to know we'd been fooled by these people, so we let them keep it. We just wanted them out of our lives, end quote. I looked up from the file. Loretta, are you telling me Gloria Brooks has done this before? Loretta nodded. Mrs. Washington, we believe she has done this at least twice. Derek Brooks is the instrument. Gloria is the architect. They target first-generation wealth, Black, Asian, immigrant, whatever, in families where the matriarch built something from nothing. They insert Derek into the family through marriage. They extract as much as they can in the first 3 to 5 years. And when they get caught, they count on shame to keep the family quiet. She has built a career out of this, Mrs. Washington. Your daughter is not her first target. She is just the most recent one. I sat in Ruth's conference room and I let that settle. My daughter had not planned this. My daughter was not the architect of her own treachery. My daughter was a mark. A young woman Gloria had identified 7 years ago in a dorm room at Spelman as a ticket to her son's next paycheck. My daughter had grown up admiring Gloria Brooks the way young black women from working-class families sometimes admire polished, credentialed older black women, as a roadmap, as proof that the destination existed. And Gloria had used that admiration to hollow her out. I did not forgive my daughter in that moment. Understanding is not forgiveness. Tiana had still made every choice with her own 2 hands. Tiana had still written that Post-it note. Tiana had still handed me a plastic rose. But for the first time since Mother's Day, I saw my daughter as something other than my betrayer. I saw her as a young woman who had been preyed upon, who had participated, who had betrayed, but who had herself been used. And I knew, sitting in that conference room, that this changed what I was going to do at the end of the road. It did not change whether I was going to take Gloria Brooks apart. That was happening. That was non-negotiable. But it changed what I was going to say to my daughter when the smoke cleared. 3 weeks after that meeting, on a Friday afternoon in August, my phone rang. Tiana. I didn't answer. It rang again. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again, and again. By the time I stopped counting, she had called me 31 times in 4 hours. Her voicemails started angry. Mama, I can't believe you filed a lawsuit against Mother Gloria. Do you have any idea what you've done? And they moved through every gear in between, accusing, bargaining, threatening to keep the grandbabies from me, then breaking, then sobbing. The last voicemail, number 31, was 12 minutes long. She left it at 8:47 p.m. I listened to it in my kitchen, standing at the counter, with Harold's letter in my hand. She said through tears, Mama, I found out about Grace Park. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. Derek told me. Derek told me she left him because she was unstable. Mama, oh my God, Mama, oh my God. What have I done? What have I done to you? Mama, please call me back. Please, I don't know who I am right now. I don't know who I've been. Please, Mama. I listened to the whole thing. I did not delete it. I also did not call her back. Not that night. I let her sit in it. 3 days later, I texted her. 1 line. Piedmont Park, Thursday at 10 a.m. The bench near the Rose Garden. Come alone. Not Derek, not Gloria, not a lawyer, just you. She replied within 1 minute. I'll be there. Thursday morning was bright. Atlanta in late August. The humidity was heavy, but there was a little breeze moving through the park. I got there at 9:45. I sat on Harold's bench. He used to take me there on Saturday mornings. It was under a big old oak tree, and you could see the skyline if you looked past the fountain. Tiana walked up at 9:58. She was thinner than I'd seen her in years. No makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. She was wearing a plain gray t-shirt and jeans. She looked like the girl I used to drop off at Spelman move-in day. She sat down on the bench. Not too close, maybe 2 feet away. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then she said quietly, Mama, I don't know where to start. I said, don't start, baby. Listen. She nodded. I said, I know about Grace Park. I know that your husband and his mother have been running this same play on families like ours for over a decade. I know you didn't build this scheme. But Tiana, I want to be very clear with you. You participated in it. You took money from your mother that you knew wasn't yours to take. You wrote a Post-it note that said, don't let Mama A see the amount. You called another woman mother at your own mother's expense. You made your own choices with your own hands. Tears were running down her face. She didn't wipe them. I said, but I also know that when a predator identifies a young woman from a family like ours, a family where the mama built the business, where the grandmama washed laundry, where the daughter is the first to go to college, they know exactly which strings to pull. They know we want to belong. They know we're ashamed of things we shouldn't be ashamed of. They know we'll trade our whole inheritance for a feeling of having arrived. And Gloria Brooks knew those things about you the first day she met you. Tiana was sobbing now. I still didn't reach for her. I said, Tiana, I am not here to forgive you today. I don't know if I'm going to forgive you ever. Forgiveness isn't the word we need today. What I am here to tell you is that if you want your mother back, not your bank, not your safety net, your mother, you are going to have to do 3 things. I'm going to say them once. You're going to listen. She nodded. 1. You are going to file for divorce from Derek Brooks within 30 days. Not because I'm telling you to, because you will never be free from Gloria as long as you are married to her son. She will keep her claws in your children for the rest of their lives if you let her. You file, and you fight for full custody, and you win. I will pay for your lawyer. Not $1 more than the lawyer. That's the last check I write for you. 2. You are going to come to Greater Faith Baptist with me every Sunday for 1 year. I am not asking you to do this to fix your relationship with me. I am asking you to do it to fix your relationship with yourself. You need a room full of black women who remember who you were before you were ashamed of it. You need to hear the old hymns. You need to sit in the pew I sat in with your daddy. You do not have to sit next to me, but you come. 3. I paused. This one was the hardest to say. 3. You are going to learn your grandmother's name. Your real grandmother, Eliza May Johnson, born 1912, Bibb County, Georgia. Washed white folks' laundry for 43 years with her own 2 hands so your grandmama Clara could finish the 8th grade. You are going to teach Keisha and Elijah that name. You are going to tell them where they come from. You are not from the Brooks family, Tiana. You are from the Johnsons and the Washingtons. You come from fire, and my grandbabies are going to know it. Tiana was crying so hard she couldn't speak. I stood up. I love you, baby. That's the part that made all of this so hard. I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Not when you handed me that plastic rose. Not when I saw that Post-it. Not when I walked out of your kitchen in Georgetown. I kept loving you the whole time. That's a mama's curse. We don't get to turn it off. I took a breath. The door is not closed, Tiana, but it is not open the way it used to be. It's open a crack. If you want to come through it, you come through it on the terms I just told you. Do you understand me? She nodded, still couldn't speak. All right, baby. You take care of yourself. I walked away. I did not look back. I walked across Piedmont Park all the way to my car, and I drove home, and I sat in my kitchen, and I put my head down on the table, and I wept. Harold's letter was still on the kitchen counter. I read it again. I whispered, I did it, baby. I did the hard thing. It's been 14 months since that morning in Piedmont Park. Tiana filed for divorce 18 days after our conversation. It finalized in March. She moved back to Atlanta with Keisha and Elijah. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta. She teaches kindergarten at Toomer Elementary. Her salary is $38,000 a year. She comes to Greater Faith Baptist every Sunday. She sits 3 pews behind me. We do not sit together, not yet, but she is always there. Pastor Whitfield asked me gently one Sunday in October how my daughter was doing. I said, Pastor, she's still coming. That's all I need to know right now. The lawsuit against Gloria Brooks was settled out of court in November. Gloria's attorneys offered $540,000 in cash, plus a confidentiality agreement, plus an admission of financial impropriety that would be sealed. Loretta wanted to reject it and go to trial. I thought about it for a week. I said, Loretta, I'm 61 years old. I have a foundation to run and grandbabies to raise. Take the money. Take the admission. Seal it. She'll know what she did. That's enough for me. We took it. Gloria sold her house in Druid Hills in January. She moved in with her sister in Charlotte. I have not seen her since Mother's Day 2024, and I do not expect to see her again. The Harold Washington Foundation launched on February 14th of this year, Harold's birthday. 50 full-ride scholarships awarded in our first cohort. I cried at the ceremony. One of our recipients, a woman named Angela, 32 years old, 4 years out of state prison, mother of 3, got up to speak. She said, Mrs. Washington, I didn't think anybody was going to give me another chance in this life. You gave me one. I'm going to use it. I hugged that woman for a long time. She felt like my own. Tiana submitted an application to the foundation in December. She applied anonymously. She used her maiden name, Washington, which she'd gone back to after the divorce. She wrote about wanting to go back to school for her master's in social work. Our selection committee, a panel of 5 women, none of whom knew my family, gave her a scholarship based on her essay. When I found out, weeks after the fact, I sat in my kitchen and I cried for a different reason for the first time in almost 2 years. I called Ruth. I said, Ruth, my baby girl won it on her own. She won it on her own. Ah. Ruth said, Anna, I know. I already heard. Every Saturday now, Keisha and Elijah come to my house. Their mother drops them off at 10 and picks them up at 4. Keisha is 7 years old. She stands on a wooden step stool in my kitchen. The same step stool, I am not kidding, the same wooden step stool, and she helps me make peach cobbler. Last month, she looked up at me with flour on her cheek and she said, Grandma Anna, why don't Mommy and Daddy live together anymore? I got down on one knee. I said, baby, sometimes grown-ups have to learn things they should have already known. And sometimes the learning hurts, but your mommy is learning, and she's doing a beautiful job, and one day you're going to be so proud of her. Keisha thought about that. Then she said, Grandma Anna, can I make biscuits better than you someday? I laughed, out loud, from the bottom of my stomach. I said, baby, you come back every Saturday and we'll find out. 3 weeks ago, I was in the kitchen alone on a Tuesday evening. I was baking sweet potato pies for a funeral at church. I was humming Harold's favorite hymn, His Eye is on the Sparrow, when I stopped in the middle of the song. I set down my mixing spoon. I stood at the counter, and I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't waiting for Tiana to come all the way back. I wasn't waiting for an apology big enough to fill the hole. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. I wasn't waiting for a Mother's Day that looked like the ones on television commercials. I was just here, in my kitchen, in my own life, baking pies for my church family, humming a hymn my husband had loved, with a foundation doing good work in my husband's name, with 2 grandbabies coming Saturday, with a daughter who was 3 pews behind me on Sunday mornings, slowly learning how to sit upright in her own life. I walked to the kitchen window and I looked out at Harold's rose garden. The roses were in full bloom, 20 years old and still coming back every spring. I whispered to him, I'm all right, baby. I'm finally all right. Last Sunday, after service, Tiana caught up with me in the church parking lot. First time she's spoken to me at church in a year. She said, Mama, I baked a sweet potato pie last night, my first one. Keisha helped me. I wanted to bring you a slice, if you want it. I looked at my daughter, 33 years old, tired eyes, her hair in simple braids, standing in a church parking lot holding a Tupperware container. I said, baby, bring it over. The door's unlocked from 4 to 6 on Tuesday. She nodded. She didn't hug me. She turned and walked to her car. She came Tuesday at 3:57, 3 minutes early. I want to talk to you now, the women watching this, because I know who you are. You're 60-something. You worked hard. You raised your children right, or you thought you did. And somewhere along the way, something changed. Maybe it was small. Maybe it was a plastic rose. Maybe it was something you can't even name, but you feel in your chest every night when you lie down. I want to say 3 things to you. The first thing, you are not your money. You are not your house. You are not the tuition checks or the down payments or the bailouts. If the people you love can only see you through the lens of what you can give them, that is not love. That is a transaction. And you are allowed to walk away from a transaction, even if it has your own child's name on it. The second thing, forgiveness and a front door key are not the same thing. You can forgive someone in your heart and still not invite them back to your kitchen table. You can love someone from a distance. You can say, I wish you well and I hope you grow, without also saying, come on in and sit down. The church sometimes teaches us otherwise. The world sometimes teaches us otherwise. I am telling you, as a 61-year-old black woman who has buried a husband and walked through fire, those are 2 different doors. You get to decide which one opens. The third thing, if you are a daughter watching this, if you stumbled onto this video because your mother sent you the link or because you saw the thumbnail and something in your stomach turned, pick up your phone. Call her. Do not apologize yet. Just call her and ask her what she had for breakfast. Ask her if her knees are acting up. Ask her if she slept all right. That's all she wants. I'm telling you, that's everything she wants. The plastic rose, I still have it. It sits in a drawer in my kitchen. I didn't throw it away. I didn't burn it. I didn't cry over it. I kept it because I want to remember. I want to remember that the cheapest thing anybody ever handed me turned out to be the most expensive gift I ever received. It cost me a daughter for a season. It cost me my idea of who I thought I was. It cost me $1.5 million I'd spent buying something I thought I could buy. And in exchange, it gave me back myself. That's the part I want you to hear, sisters. You can't buy your children's love. You never could. What you can do, what Harold Washington told me from the other side of the grave, is refuse to let anybody, including the child you bore, turn you into a smaller woman than the one God made you to be. I'm Anna Mae Johnson Washington. I'm 61 years old. I come from Eliza May and Clara. I married Harold. I raised Tiana. I built Washington's sweet kitchen. I am made of fire and honey. And if you're still watching, leave a comment and tell me where you're from. Tell me your mama's name. Tell me your grandmama's name. Let's make a list of the women who built us. The ones nobody put in the history books. The ones who washed laundry and cleaned houses and stood on their own 2 feet in this country when this country did not want them standing. Tell me their names. I want to read every one.